Well, welcome to another episode of Locked Off Logic Podcast. I'm Sam, your co-host, here with
Tyler.
And today we're talking about Game of Thrones. That is today, right?
Yes, Game of Thrones.
That is right. Last episode was Last of Us recap, part 1, discussion on that.
Which was our longest episode, I think. Two and a half hours.
It was 2.5 hours.
We're approaching like Joe Rogan territory. I was looking at it this morning. I was like our longest episodes, and yeah, last was part 1, which I'm not surprised. Like
it was 2.5 hours.
Yeah, bro, we sat in this spot for 2.5 hours, and
yeah. Well, an hour of that was my water heater.
Did we get it fixed?
So I'm working on the audio right now. So if you're listening to this, you have already heard it by now, and hopefully you don't notice it, but you probably will to a degree. It's not awful, but it is there. But anyways, I'm working on it. I'm getting it sorted. But that's just the joys of, doing it in the garage.
That's right.
Without a control, as control of a space as it can be, I suppose. But wow, 2.5 hours. Wait, go us! It's our podcast. We can do what we want.
Yeah, and they do it now to where like you can put podcasts on like triple speed or whatever.
I wish I had one of those.
Oh, bro, you gotta get one of these chargers. It has the backup battery for one, and then it has like this little kickstand where you can just like, if you're someone like me that likes to take notes and read notes during the podcast without having my phone up in my face, I just put this right here.
Mouse. I have a mouse case. We're not sponsored. I would love
Mouse
sponsor us.
We'll tag her in.
Should I drop my phone? Maybe later. If you don't already have one, I want something like this, Mouse. I want a charger and a stand.
Charger and a stand. Yep. It makes it a little beefier, the cell phone, but at this point, I'm not looking for style. I just want double battery and something to put a stand on. It doesn't go vertically like this. You can't do you might be able to try.
Maybe.
But this is better.
That's nice. Anyways, we digress. Yeah. Well, today we're talking about Game of Thrones. Today will not be 2.5 hours because I have got to go and get a root canal done today. Hurrah. At least, I don't know actually what they're going to do. I'm assuming it's the root canal.
It was on the right tooth.
On the right tooth. Like, man, it's been like a month-long thing where it's been in pain. It's been cold sensitive. I went in and had it looked at. There was a crack in the top of one of my crowns, like nearby. And they're like, well, we think that it's probably that, which makes sense. Like if something gets up in there, and I haven't had a root canal on that, the cold can whatever can translate to the teeth nearby. But I'm like, I don't think it's that tooth. I know that there's a hole there, but I don't think it's that tooth. Anyways, by process of elimination, I got a new crown on just to see if that would fix the problem. The cold and the heat sensitivity has gone down significantly, but now like chewing, any pressure, like even gummies, just like a soft gummy hurts. I'm like, that's a problem. So anyways, the last time he said, well, go see if the crown works. If it doesn't work, then maybe we'll have to end up doing a root canal. But it's a different tooth, so I don't know what they're going to do. Anyways, it was a long-winded answer to say we don't have 2.5 hours today to talk about Game of Thrones. So I guess we'll just get right into it.
Okay, no question?
Oh, yeah, a question, of course.
I do have one question. It'll be a quick one. So I get people that ask, because I have all the streaming services, right? Most of the streaming services. There's some that I don't. Like Peacock, I will get whenever they have like an NFL game on it. And then I'll just get rid of it because Peacock does not have enough content on it that calls my attention to keep it around. But I was curious, in your case, let's say someone comes to you and they're like, I have in my budget 2 streaming services. Which 2 should I get based on quality content? Because I assume most people that listen to this will probably have Disney Plus because of the amount of like Disney movies and Marvel and Star Wars or whatever, and they'll probably already have that. And you can say that if you want. If that's one of your top 2, you can say that. But if someone wants the two streaming services that produce the most quality content every year, or that have the best original series, which ones would you recommend? You only have two. You have to choose. You can have two and then a dark horse.
I already got my answers.
Okay, let's hear it.
Max.
As one of your
HBO?
dark horses, or
No.
your two?
Yes, Max and Apple TV. Those two, Max in particular, seems to just have consistent what I will call quote unquote premium TV, because I actually saw an article today I was reading. I didn't get too much into it because it was Business Insider, and you start scrolling and then it
paywall
goes,
comes up.
hey, paywall. It's like, I'm not paying for you. So I stopped reading. But what it talked about essentially was Netflix's content CEO or something. I don't know the title, but basically she said, she made a comment of like, no one knows what premium TV actually is or means. And if it is, from what I gathered on the very limited paywall block I got, was that people actually don't view premium TV as much as they view everything else. And so that's why Netflix just continues to make
The money?
quantity over quality.
Okay, got it.
Yep. Because there's not a huge audience for premium TV, whatever premium is. And I think that's the point that she's trying to make. Is like, well, what is premium TV? Because is premium TV what most people watch, or is premium TV what is high quality, blah, blah, blah. What I view as high quality and really good as of late, HBO Max, and Apple TV.
Okay, what about your dark horse?
Dark horse, I guess Netflix, but I just don't view, I don't visit any other streamers really.
Okay, mine. My two that I recommend to people are Max and Prime. I'm a big fan of the stuff that Prime has. It's original stuff like Reacher.
Say that again. I know that just totally interrupted.
Oh no! Your drink is, what is that? Dr. Pepper.
It's a little bit of Mountain Dew Code Red.
Oh, okay.
With Pepsi Zero.
Okay, very cool.
It's very good.
So I would say my two, like the must-haves as far as like quality content, and then my dark horse. I would say two must-haves: Max and Prime, and the dark horse Paramount Plus. And I love, there's stuff on Netflix I like, there's stuff on Disney Plus I like, but what you just talked about as far as like there's this meme that goes around on TikTok that's like the four horsemen of the apocalypse of the movie that I will definitely skip. It's like Gal Gadot, The Rock, and then two other random actors, and they're always on Netflix. And it's always movies that are just fine. You watch them for 2 hours and then you forget them. Like Red Notice.
Red One.
Red One, a great example. I'm just like, oh, I'm definitely skipping this. But Red Notice, specifically because it was a Netflix exclusive, and there's just a whole bunch of fine.
Is it Red Notice or Red One?
No, it's Red Notice.
It is Red Notice.
Yeah, there's Red One that has The Rock and then J. Jonah Jameson. I can't remember his name, but that came out in theaters.
So is Red Notice with Ryan Reynolds, The Rock, and Gal Gadot?
I think so.
Okay.
And it is just a whole lot of fine. I don't know I think Ryan Reynolds is in it, but it's just there. You watch it 2 hours and then you're just like, okay, it was what we talked about in the car that one day as far as like content. Let's just put something out so people are consuming something, even though it feels like you're consuming like a Diet Mountain Dew and you really want a Code Red.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I guess I'm not thirsty anymore, but I'm not satisfied. And Disney Plus the same way.
That's what she said.
Very good.
Got him.
That's a good one. You got me there. I'll give you credit for that. That was a good joke. But Disney Plus, same way. That's where I think Marvel kind of went off like their issue is that they went away from like quality content and just went content. Just consume. They just have to stream something.
Yeah.
And Max, I think, has a lot of quality stuff. Prime, things like The Boys, Reacher, Jack Ryan, Rings of Power. And then for those that Paramount Plus is a little less known, but the original series that have on Paramount Plus, things like SEAL Team and The Lioness, really good stuff.
The lioness. That's
Very
Zoe Valdana.
Mm-hmm.
Saldana.
Yeah.
Zoe Saldana.
Yeah.
Which I absolutely love.
Yeah. She's really good.
She's an incredible actress. Incredible actress. And she just seems like a down to earth, good human being.
Yeah.
So I'm full support of Zoe. Team Zoe.
Yeah.
Team Zoe.
We'll plug the Linus. Linus is a good show. And I think that SEAL Team is probably the best show that I've seen in the last 10 years as far as like overall. It's 8 seasons, really well made. They invested a lot in like the budget. The actors are just like David Boreanaz from Bones is amazing.
I think I've been on one of the sets for the SEAL Team.
Oh, dude.
I think I've been on the back of their plane.
Really?
Yes, because they spend a lot of time. Do they have a? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember where and how.
Okay. Revisit the series. It's if you got Paramount
Okay.
Plus. It's really, really good.
I don't have Paramount Plus, unfortunately.
It's really good. That's my dark horse. But Prime, I think you get a lot of good, and not just like the shopping, but like the quality content on Prime. But then Max, I mean, every month like they're kicking out just some new shit that's really good. Like Game of Thrones on there that we'll talk about today. That's where like the Nickelodeon documentary came out last year about all the abuse that went on like Nickelodeon, ruined all of our childhoods. They know how to tell a good story. They invest a lot in the directors, in the cast to make a good story, not just content. And the documentaries they put out are things that I think are interesting to a lot of different people. Like the Subway documentary on there with Jared Fogle, the pedophile, the Nickelodeon abuse scandal.
Chimp Crazy.
Yep, Chimp Crazy. Like, so I haven't seen that one yet.
Penguin.
The Penguin.
Which I haven't seen yet, but I hear amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, big Max fan.
Okay.
Big Max fan.
So I guess the thing we've come to consensus on is if you have a budget for one streaming service, get Max.
Yes, 100%. Okay, I was just like going to say something that you spurred. What was it? I felt like it was a real. Oh yes. Okay, HBO Max. Here's another reason why I like HBO Max from a cinematographer's point of view. All right, so Netflix has a thing called the Netflix Technology Alliance or whatever. And basically, they have come to this conclusion and this group, board, whatever you want to call them, alliance, and they've like gone, okay, here's our set standard for technological specifications. So they standardize 4K, which means all of their original content has to be natively shot a minimum of 4K resolution and a bunch of other speculations. And then every single camera that is shot, if it's going to be a Netflix original, has to be a Netflix approved camera. And so they have all of these cameras listed of what specifications are accepted and not, blah, 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 blah. So basically this is setting a standard of technical excellence and a standard of what they require to make an original show. So that is a bit gimmicky to a degree because of the 4K resolution, which just pushed more TV manufacturers to make 4K minimum TVs and chasing the resolution game. It's another rabbit hole to go down. And I went to an HBO Max demonstration, a Max demonstration of a camera test. And they do it every few years. And essentially they take 5 of the best cameras available and they put them through the ringer to test them to see which ones are the best. And in all of these different specifications, dynamic range, color, capture and color fidelity, all of these different special technical aspects. And they took cameras and they this is not public. They don't give this out to the public. They only show it at special events or trade shows or things like that. So I went and saw it at the Paramount. Was it Paramount? I think it was Paramount lot in Burbank. I went and watched this, and they took these cameras, which they had $100,000 cameras, and they had a $6,000 camera, and then in between these top manufacturers, and they did this test. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on it, and they did six variation of these tests. And anyways, what I'm getting to is some of those cameras were not Netflix approved, and others were Netflix approved. But when they brought all of the tests together, there was very little variance in quality of capture. And essentially, they say they do this test because, one, they want to make sure that the shows that they're making have a certain standard, but they want to also ensure that the creators making those shows have the choice to tell the story the way that they want to tell them, and have creative be more important than technical. So essentially, their conclusion has come to any camera nowadays is pretty sufficient quality. There's obviously variances in how far you can stretch that, and then the different capabilities within a camera. But for a substandard capture, 4K, 2398 frames per second, just a very base capture, it's like all of these cameras are suitable, and they're good, and they're going to be fantastic. From a Blackmagic Ursa 12K to an Alexa 35, which most people hearing this is probably like, I don't know what that is, and that's fine. You don't need to. But what I loved about that is they put creative first over technical. And they're like, we want the people that make shows for HBO Max or Max, that we are not limiting their creative desires based on what we claim as technologically sufficient, which I just love, because there are times and places for different captures and cameras and different things, and it's just a tool, and it's the artist using the tool. So after seeing that from a cinematographer and filmmaker's perspective, I was like, I'm a huge fan of Max, because they're putting story and creative first over the tech and the science. And I love that, because that's when good shit happens.
Yeah.
So there's my rant about that.
Cool. Well, speaking of good shit that Max put out, they put out Game of Thrones season 1, which I just finished. I just finished season 1. It's interesting. Like I've remember watching the Game of Thrones hype, and I just never got into it. My buddy's a big Game of Thrones fan. You said that Game of Thrones was your favorite show of all time.
Could be
your favorite show of all time. And on the podcast, we're like, well, let's talk about it. So it gave me like the extra push I needed to, like, I'm gonna sit down and watch this show. And I just finished season 1 last night. I think the Dragon Queen, is that
Daenerys?
Yes, her.
Yes.
Yeah, she. The last scene of the last episode is when the 3 dragons hatch.
She comes out of fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I did not know that Jason Momoa only lasted 1 season. So I guess well, what do you want to know? You want to know my thoughts on this? What do you
Yeah, so let me backtrack a little bit. So Tyler hasn't seen Game of Thrones, obviously, until now. It has been a very long time that Game of Thrones has been out.
Yeah, 2011 is when the first season came out.
So I also took a very long time to get on the Game of Thrones bandwagon. And it wasn't until I watched House of the Dragon season 1 a couple years ago where I was like, oh my gosh, I love this world. What is this? And I want more of it. And it's like, oh, well, there's Game of Thrones. So last year, January, now we're in February, but so it's been about just over a year. I spent the end of December to the end of January binge watching all, I think, 8 seasons of Game of Thrones. And I just was hooked. And I think about it like all the time. I wanted to get I'm like, oh, I want a tattoo that says this because of this.
So this is like a thing for you. Like every time you finish a show, you're like, I gotta get something tattooed on my body that represents the TV show.
Yeah, just something that just like has a lot of meaning to me.
Okay.
And there's a question that's posed, and this is end of season 8, right? And this is not a spoiler or nothing, but Arya Stark
So she survives.
says
If it's
We
season
go-
8, I'm assuming
well-
she still survives.
maybe
Okay.
could be a flashback.
Could be a flashback.
She says, "What's west of Westeros?" And like that to me there's so much to that. And so I'm excited for you to get to that point. And who knows, it might not have the same effect. Like what's west of Westeros, and that's where I'm going. And I'm like, fuck, I love that shit.
Okay.
So, anyways, so I've been talking to Tyler about this, and Tyler's like, oh yeah, I need to watch it. So then he just watched it, just season 1 this last week. And as we talked a little bit about it last week, all of these memories started flooding back. And to me, it's all in one sitting. For people, it's been a year-long endeavor, but for me, it's all in one sitting. So I'm like, well, what was that season 1? Was that season 4? Was that season 3? Anyways, I'm been not trying to say too much because if it's the wrong season, I don't want to, spoil, because the timeline in Game of Thrones and the character development and who you're with and who you're moving through and who goes away and who stays, it's wild.
Yeah.
So, Tyler, was season 1 up to snuff from what everyone talked about?
Yes. I'm gonna give it an A. Maybe an A minus. There were some things I loved, some things I didn't like. But the things I didn't like were more of like on the human side of it, not on like the story side. But I'll start with like the stuff that I liked. First off, the Game of Thrones season 1, these guys have a hell of a ability to see talent when talent has yet to been cultivated. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like I'm watching this and I'm like, this is filmed it was released back in 2011. And since then, people like Jason Momoa, for example, huge star. He was Aquaman. He's been in Fast and Furious. He just signed on with James Gunn's new DC thing. I'm like, he's a big time star now. He's in a lot of demand. Sophia Turner, the redheaded princess. I don't know her name in the
Sansa Stark.
I'm like, she's huge now too. Like she's all over Sundance. She's always in Sundance films. She was in the X-Men franchise. She was great in that. This is when she was just like a little kid. What's the actor's name that plays Jon Snow? Kit? Is that his name?
Yes. Kit Harington.
Kit Harington. Like he's in big demand too. Like I see him in all kinds of stuff. I know that he just signed on to do like some Marvel stuff. I don't know if that's still happening or not, but I know he signed on to do it. I know that in later seasons, Bella Ramsey and Pedro come in, who are two of the biggest stars in the world. And this was like their start. Even like Peter Dinklage, is that his name?
Uh-huh.
The Imp? Like he's mass. He's been in so many different things. Like when there is a role that has to be filled where a short guy is needed, an imp is needed. Like he was in the X-Men Days of Future Past movie. He's been in all these different things. Like all these massive stars that got their start in Game of Thrones. I'm like, whoever was casting this, and then Emilia Clarke. Like she's obviously massive now too. I'm like the people that casted this, like they just recognize talent. Where they're like, these people, they're going to be huge. And this is going to be their entryway into stardom.
Well, I'm gonna ask who the casting director was, because that's a secret weapon in filmmaking. Is a casting director, like you're saying. All of these folks. There was obviously some recognizable talent.
Sean Bean.
Sean Bean, yeah.
He was
Ned
great.
Stark.
Yeah.
Right?
I knew they killed him, but I was like, what I came away from watching this show with Ned Stark specifically is that this show is full of assholes. And the guy that's the least asshole was Ned. Now he's gone. So I imagine that just chaos ensues. Because of all the assholes in this world, he's the one that's the least asshole.
Ned was a good dude.
Yeah, you're a very good dude. And after watching this, I'm like, you know what we need is I know that um, they're working on like a Lord of the Rings in between cool movie right now. Lord of the Rings: The Hunt for Gollum, which is fine. I think they need to give Sean Bean a Boromir spinoff. If they're gonna do something like de-age him, whatever you need to do, but he was so good as Ned Stark. I wish I got more of him as Boromir in Lord of the Rings. Give that son of a bitch his own movie. Be like, okay, this is why Boromir got invited to the Council of Elrond based on this battle. Let's bring him back. Let's sign him on for a 3-hour movie. Let's spend 3 hours with Sean Bean and his Boromir again. That's what I thought. I was a big fan.
Well, and Sean Bean, he's an incredible talent. Incredible talent.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, Sean Bean was and is, as Ned Stark, one of the best television characters ever, in my opinion. And it was so sad that we only got to spend a season with him, and then a lot of that season was him imprisoned, you know. But it sets the stage for, as what they like to say, this Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
But Nina Gold, casting director, great job, Nina.
Oh my gosh.
Great job.
Just everything. Like there's the big time actors like Sean, and then there's like these new actors are now big time actors that got their start in Game of Thrones. So I was a big fan of that. I was a big fan of as like you said, the world as a whole, where it's really good as far as like developing story. Like you're curious of like first off like the family, the Kings, were like the blonde haired guy, the twins.
The Lannisters.
The Lannisters are the most fucked up family in the world. Like episode 1, like they push that little kid out the window because these twins are having sex with each other. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then like that shove ends up being
Jamie and Cersei.
Yeah. Ends up being like the catalyst of like so many things that happen like in season 1. So you see like these two families like starting to feud. Because this one family is just so messed up. The Wall is always really interesting to me. Like I know they send like their outcast there. Jon Snow was there, so and he was, I think right away you just kind of knew he has like the trope of like this guy's gonna be a good character because he's the bastard son of this amazing famous family. You're like, this guy's gonna do something really cool at some point. So they send him to the Wall where a bunch of outcasts go. A bunch of nobodies like the fat guy and these people that have never picked up a sword before, and he's like the one soldier there. And based on what you see in the opening scene of season 1 with these guys running away from these like snow zombies, the White Walkers, I think
The White Walkers.
I'm assuming that wall is to keep them out or something in their realm or something. They don't really get into it. There's this fear throughout the whole season of there's something in those woods, in that snow, that people should be scared of. But they're not as scared of it as they probably should be. Like they're scared, but I think with time, because they mentioned that these White Walkers sleep under the snow for a long time, because they have this wall, they have this night watch. It's really important, but they send just their misfits there, where it's like, well, just send them there. And so obviously they're scared of it, but not probably as scared as they should be. Or like people like the Kingslayer would be there. If that group, the White Walkers, you don't see anything of other than like the opening scene, is as scary as I think they're going to be. They really messed up as far as like who they're putting on patrol at that wall.
The Wall. The Men of the Night's Watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh, this is taking me back. Yeah. Right. This whole thing is winter is coming, and this association with these White Walkers, who they are, what they're capable of doing. Obviously, this big wall, this massive wall that stands in between the North and them. And yeah, there's not a lot of great fighters per se at the Night's Watch. But the Wall is really the Wall is the thing,
the fighter.
That's the defense. The Wall is the defense.
Okay.
So it's primarily maintaining the Wall.
Okay.
Or is it?
I don't know. That's what my question is. And it's interesting because like the storytelling and like Brandon talked about this too when he was on the podcast. Um, how they just walk you through this world and because all these people are like none of these people. There's three characters in this show that I could say that like I I think they might be good people. I think so. But the rest of them, I think they're total garbage, but they're interesting enough to me to where I'm like, okay, let's see where this story goes. So the characters I really enjoyed in this show was Ned. He seemed like the only good guy in this whole thing. Um, I really enjoyed Jon Snow just because there's something about him where it's like I know he does something good at some point. Got a really cool name. He's the bastard son of Ned, so obviously like he doesn't have the name of Stark, but he's got Stark blood, and the Stark blood is much more important than the Stark name. I'm assuming when it comes to fighting. And then I really enjoyed the little girl, Ayana. Is that her name?
Aya.
Arya Stark, the little one, like kind of the tomboy. She's training with like the swordsman most of the season, and at the end of the season, she has her hair cut. She's gonna pretend to be like a homeless boy, I believe is what's going on. I think she's the most genuine one in the show, where it's like she acts and says and thinks or acts and says exactly what she's thinking. And she's the only one that really gave it to Joffrey throughout this whole season. Like Joffrey, by the end of it, is just making everybody in this whole show his bitch, but not her. The one time in the show where he got what he deserved is when that little girl kicked the shit out of him and sicked her dog on him. So that I really liked. But the rest of the characters, they're kind of walking you through this world that, like, for me, I'm still trying to like get a handle of. I know that there's the Starks and where they live. West, they live in the West. Where do they live?
So the land is Westeros.
Okay, that group. There's the Lannisters, which are the assholes, but they're the ones that are in charge. I'm assuming of most of it.
So now my geography. Now I'm going to be put to the test. So the Lannisters are at King's Landing,
Okay,
which is this city.
the capital city.
The capital city,
okay.
right? The Starks are at Winterfell.
Okay. Okay, there's the Starks.
I'm going to be ripped apart if I'm wrong on this, but
That's okay. Well, it's season 1, so we'll figure it out.
Yes,
we'll
yes.
figure it out. I'll bring back the memories, and I'll
I'll
you'll
just-
learn. You'll bring the memories. I'll learn as you go.
okay.
And then there's the horse group with Drogo.
Khal Drogo.
Yeah, Drogo. Rocky. There's the horse group that just seemed like
Across the Narrow Sea.
okay. There's the two sons of the dragons. I don't know where they belong.
Sons of the Dragon.
There's Amelia Clark's character, the Queen of the
Oh
Dragons.
yes, Daenerys, Queen Daenerys.
Here, and then her brother. Yeah. I'm not sure where they belong.
So they're from
The capital?
the capital
Okay.
because they used to their family used he was the Mad King.
So that's why the Fat King wants her dead.
Yes.
Okay, got it. And that's why they're nervous about her joining up with the horse crew because
Yes,
Okay.
because then bring war
okay,
across.
there's the there's little offshoot groups that we're finding like along the way, like the Vikings that help the little guy fight his fight that they're getting ready to fight.
The little guy being Peter Dinklage.
Yes.
Tyrion.
We'll get the names at some point. There's the White Walkers, which is a group you don't see anything of. And I think that's all the groups. Am I missing one in season 1? I think that's all the groups.
So, King's Landing, capital of the Seven Kingdoms, right?
Okay.
Home to the Iron Throne.
Yeah.
Dragonstone, which you haven't been there yet.
No, that's a new name.
So there's the North, which is Winterfell, which is the House of Stark.
Okay.
The Wall, which you've already been. Castle Black,
Nope.
which is the main stronghold of the Night's Watch.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then Beyond the Wall, which is the North. Let's see. So you haven't hit here. You haven't hit here. So you have Castle Rock, which is the seat of House Lannister.
Okay.
So that's where their father is, but that's not where Jaime and Sansa are.
Okay.
Jaime and Sansa are at King's Landing. Let's see. Keep going here.
Hmm.
Oh man, yeah. So there's so much. So Essos is the eastern continent, right? So that's where. So Westeros is where you're spending most of your time. Essos is where Queen Daenerys is currently residing
With the
with
horse.
Khal Drogo.
Okay, and he's died. He died this season. The her brother died, got the Golden Crown, which is great. That guy just had it coming. That guy was a freaking piece of shit. I can tell this show really likes to put pieces of shit to do really shitty things, and then when they get their their come due, it just feels really good. Because when the guy got the Golden Crown, I was like, yeah, he deserved that. Like he's such a prick. There's a lot of pricks in this show. A lot of
Oh,
pricks.
bro,
And
you have not.
oh.
Just wait, just wait.
But they're interesting pricks. That's that's what makes I think their story interesting. Is you, for me, watching it for the first time, just getting to know these. They're really bad characters. They're really bad people, but the story is interesting enough to where like you're hooked.
Well, that's the thing that I love about Game of Thrones is the intimate journey of every single character.
Yeah.
And you span this land and this history with each character, and they're interwoven with each other, and it's just it is this mess of greed, of power, of betrayal, and everyone seemingly wants the throne, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get the throne. And then there's people that want nothing to do with it but are entangled within it. And then how do they affect everyone else's story and journey? And I mean, right from the get-go, right? You have Ned and his family, and Ned takes Arya and Sansa over, and then who gets left behind? Sansa. Am I saying that right?
Who are you talking about?
The redhead.
Oh, yeah, she's left behind.
Yes, Sansa. Wow, my brain is just getting all of these people mixed up. But she gets left behind, right? And she wants to stay behind to a degree. She doesn't really know what's going on, but it's just this mess. And then you just get sucked into this journey, and you want this person to win and this person to win, and then you're like, wait, what? You did this? I don't know that I want you to win anymore. Oh, you? Who are you? Where did you come from? And it is just this dance.
Yeah.
It's this dance of tension throughout. And there are very few characters that you just are fans of from the very beginning. And then let me ask you this before I go there. Who is your most hated character right now? Season 1, your most hated character.
Man, I want to say, man, it's probably a toss up between King Joffrey, or the guy who got the Golden Crown. I feel like those two are the biggest two assholes.
So if I'm trying to remember the guy who got the Golden Crown.
It's the
brother,
yeah,
Jamie.
the brother, yeah.
Yes, Jamie.
Yeah.
So Jamie and Joffrey. Yes, those are awful people.
But I also hate the twin sister,
Cersei.
Yeah, she's terrible too.
Awful. So I'm going to ask you that again at the end.
Okay.
And we'll see. And who's your favorite characters right now?
Probably Jon Snow and Little Stark.
Okay, Jon Snow and Arya.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's technically spelled like Arya.
Yeah.
Arya, but I think they say Arya.
I remember how they say it. I just remember I was a big fan just because she's the two daughters. Like when they go to the capital with Ned, we talk about like on the show all the time of like tell someone you love them because you just don't know when the last time you're gonna speak to them is. And Ned's relationship with his two kids in the Capitol are so fascinating. Really sad, honestly. Like both stories when he passed away, because his youngest daughter, he's very attentive to her needs. Where like he knows that she's different. He knows. So he gets her a little swordsman to practice with. Like, okay, you want to be a dangerous little girl? Like, okay, I got you a trainer. Like, you gotta show up. You gotta take your beatings. But if this is what you want, and like for her, like that gift was so personal to her that you could tell just how much she enjoyed it. Versus like when he tries to give this gift to his other daughter, who's getting ready to marry Joffrey, and she just totally rejects it. I mean, obviously you can tell that he put a lot of thought into this gift, which can't be hard to come by in the world that they live in the world of Game of Thrones. And she's just like, I'm not a little kid anymore. And you can just tell he's just, just hurt. He's like, oh man, that was no good. And then two episodes later, he's getting his head chopped off while she's watching and pleading for him. But she didn't get to plea on his behalf to him. She had to plea on his behalf to her husband. I don't know if they're married yet or not, but yeah, the whole thing was just the relationship with all the Starks, the two men that are preparing the army, that are getting ready to invade. I assume the capital, having this big fight, which I thought that big fight would come in season 1. It didn't. I'm assuming it's like building up toward this big going conflict.
Everything's building.
And then Jon Snow, out there on the wall, the Night Watch. I don't know. You just can tell something's brewing.
Oh, it's always brewing. It is, and you think that it's gonna get resolved, and then something else starts brewing, and wow, I'm amazed. I'm amazed because I'm going back in my memory. I'm going back in my memory, and I'm like, well, then this happens, and then you're just so focused on this, and then this happens, and then you're just focused on this. There is I won't say who. There's a character. There's a character that in, I believe it's season 5, who is literally the entire season being tortured.
Oh man,
that is it. This character, I won't say if it's a boy or a girl, is only tortured throughout the entire season. Every episode that they are in, tortured. And like you're so like that conflict, you're just like so enveloped in, but there's so much other things that are happening. And that's the thing I just really love about Game of Thrones is the character development and the arcs that these characters undergo and go through, good and bad. One of my favorite characters is the Hound.
Okay. So I didn't get a lot of the Hound. In season 1 of the Hound, he defends someone in the joust because his brother lost the joust. The Mountain lost the joust. And I think the Hound, if I'm remembering correctly, is the Mountain's brother.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear how the Hound got his scar. But other than that, you really don't hear much. You see him, and then he gives the Stark girl, the redheaded one. I apologize if you're watching online. I can't remember her name. Sansa. He gives her the tissue to wipe her blood, and then she tries to get it back, and he's like, "No, you're gonna need it again." That's all we really get of him.
Oh,
That's
shit.
all we get of him.
It's things like that. It's things like that where you have this character who's just so, he lives in, and he's brutal. He's the Hound. He's violent. His history is not good. And yet, in the midst of all of this hellish things that are happening and madness in the city, and I think this was right after Ned got his head chopped off, right? He hands her, he doesn't have to, right? But he hands her a tissue for her blood, and then he protects her, right? It's this protection that you're showing that there is heart underneath all of the hard.
Yep.
And that's the thing that I really appreciate in Game of Thrones is it's this violent, brutal, horrible world.
Yep.
And yet there are these pure moments of just tenderness and mercy.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that. And it's hard to find that when you're in such a horrific environment with horrific people and horrific motives. But you just feel it. You just feel actually this moment of levity and and even love and compassion where there's no love and compassion to be found anywhere. And so the way that they weave that into this story is just so well thought out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited for the rest of the journey. However, I do have two issues.
Okay.
First one is that I don't think they properly explained the role of the Dragon Queen to that actress when she first started. Because that actress is constantly nude, and a lot of the nudity that she goes to in season one, I feel like is unnecessary, and it's almost like a constant sexual assault. Like she's being trafficked by her brother. That's what he's doing, is trafficking her, selling her, and it feels like the first 5 episodes she's in a situation where she's nude, and then she's assaulted, or she's groped, or she's touched. When I was watching that, I kind of got out of my head of like consuming the story and more like this poor actress. Like I can only imagine because she can't be that old. She can be like 25, 26 maybe.
I don't know.
Of like having so much of you on screen so many different times, and most of it is violent. I didn't love that. In fact, I hated that. I was like, man, this poor actress. Like someone's got to explain to Emilia Clarke. Like, look, here's the story. How can we make this a little safer for her? That's one thing I had an issue with, and I felt like it's and like I've seen shows with nudity in them. Like that's something that just occurs frequently, especially like on HBO Max. I felt like the season one of Game of Thrones had a little too much excessive nudity. And I think this is like a trope that some TV shows do, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously you have more experience in Hollywood than I do. But I've noticed, like in some really popular series, and I'll even throw like one of my favorite shows in the world that you're currently watching, Narcos. Narcos season one, so much nudity. Narcos season 2 and 3, almost none. Almost none. It's almost like a way, I don't know if this is actually what happens, but to draw audiences in.
For sure.
Where it's like,
it is for sure.
okay, so that's what I assume. It's like you get in season one, you put as much nudity as they can, a lot of it excessive. So a lot of people come for the nudity, and then they're like, well, this is actually a pretty good story, and they stay for the story that goes on to 4 or 5 or 6 seasons. I'm going to make a prediction.
Sex sells. It's just bottom line.
I'm going to make a prediction, and I will come back and we can put this on the pod, we can put this in writing, that season 2, there will be some nudity, but I'm guessing by season 5, 6, 7, there will be a significant less amount of nudity than there was in season 1. That's my prediction. You have to tell me what happens or not, but that's my prediction, because I was like, it almost feels like they're putting it in. It was distracting at some moments where you have like these moments of like character development where you could develop Peter Dinklage's character without the nudity, or like that old guy with the beard. They threw him a nudity scene at the very end as well. But I'm like, I feel like you could have these scenes and imply like what they're implying without having these actresses being nude. It's like, why does there have to be this nudity for this character development? I'm assuming it's because sex sells and they're bringing people to watch the show. And with that, like this world, like you mentioned, like it's a fantasy world. It is an incredibly violent world for women, which is why I really enjoyed the character of the little Stark girl, because like if she was not born into this family, she could very well end up in one of these places where these women are being exploited. And I really enjoyed her empowering herself to ensure that doesn't happen, because it's a fantasy world. Like I know that, like watching it, it's a world that's incredibly demeaning to women that are not born in a specific economic class. Like it's not that different from the real world, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Now that I'm talking through it,
like
it's actually not that different from the real world.
Yeah.
And so I was happy to see that little Stark character kind of going against that tide, even though she was born into royalty, and just preparing herself. Because at this point, like she has to kind of abandon that name. Now that I'm talking through this, I'm really enjoying this conversation. She had to abandon the name of Stark, right? So she's no longer at the royalty. She's now a homeless female pretending to be a boy, and she's empowered herself enough to ensure, hopefully, that she does not end up in one of these places that these other women end up. So if I love the series so far. It's really good. I can see how people get hyped about it. Those are my two issues. I feel the human side of the actress Emilia Clarke, because I know she's a hell of an actress. I've seen her in a lot of good things where she's fully clothed. So I feel for her in the situation that she was put in as an actress, and then I know this is a reality that sex sells, and I'm sure a lot of people came to the show because like, oh, there's tons of nudity in it. I felt it was distracting at times, and really unnecessary. And my only gripe with my favorite movie of all time, Logan, is that there was a scene of nudity in there that I thought was 100% unnecessary. It lasts for maybe half a second, but still, it's like the movie would have been the same without that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say, going off of that Logan comment.
Hang on, I have one more thing to say before I do this. Before I do this, stop. Hang on the Logan comment. The only time I thought the nudity with Emilia Clarke actually said something was the last scene. Because the last scene in the show, she spends most of this show, this season 1, nude in a situation where she's being taken advantage of. The last scene of season 1, she's nude again because she survived the fire and she's got those dragons coming off of her, and people start to look at her different, where they bow to her. They're scared of her because she just survived this fire. There's a reverence about her because she's got fucking dragons on her shoulder. I still love that she was nude, but it makes sense now that people are starting to see her less as a sexual object and seeing her as truly something special, like in this series, something to be feared, something to be respected. I didn't love that she was nude again, but I can appreciate the message that it sends in the scope of the entire show.
Well, okay, so two notes. One, the Logan, which I'll get to in a second. Now, at the end, right? So the representation of her being born again as the mother of dragons, right? So
Mother Dragon. Okay, not Dragon Queen. Mother of Dragon.
no, she is the Dragon Queen, but here she is referred to as the mother of dragons.
Okay.
She has so many names, but Dragon Queen is right.
Okay.
But Mother of Dragons, especially, is this because she comes out of the fire with these 3 hatchlings, and they are born, but now she is born as the Mother of Dragons and as the Dragon Queen. So the representation of her naked in that moment is a rebirth.
Yep.
She has been rebirthed, right? And just like a baby is born naked, she was born naked, right? So I see the visual representation that they're doing with that. So I get that. And I absolutely agree with you. There is a lot of excessive, prolonged nudity and sex in Game of Thrones. In fact, I believe it was Game of Thrones that birthed the new term sex position. So in shows and TV shows, right, there's always like these moments of exposition. They're talking through things and they're explaining it.
Got it.
Well, now that's happening
While you're having sex.
while they're having sex or they're nude. So the joke kind of became, oh, it's sex position. So that became a big thing in Game of Thrones, of this whole sex position of we're gonna tell moments of the story with this. Some of it doesn't need to be there, right? And I'm not saying that any of it needs to be there, with saying that some of them doesn't need to be there, right? But I do think that there are certain times, not just in this show or in other shows, where nudity and things does help the story forward. Game of Thrones, there's a lot of it, and it's gratuitous, and yeah, they definitely can dial that back. And I'm like, do I answer your question of will it be dialed back or not?
No. I'll come back and tell you.
But I do want to say, at least for one person, for Emilia Clarke, the Dragon Queen, right? I think, if I could be mistaken, but if this is true, I was stoked to hear it. I think when she was returning to finish out the last season or last couple seasons,
So she survives.
it was in her contract that she did not want to do any more nude scenes. I believe.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Okay.
Which, honestly, I was stoked to hear.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think you're right. I probably don't think she knew exactly psychologically what she was about to get herself into with all of that. Obviously, there's scripts. and there's the history, the books of Game of Thrones. Like there's plenty of that in the books, from what I understand. So there's the scripts and those things to at least, yeah, there's this stuff that's going to happen. But I don't think that psychologically prepares you for
No.
that role. Like no way. And it was very excessive,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, honestly, like God bless her for somehow getting through that. I'm sure it was not enjoyable. I'm sure it took her toll, mentally, emotionally, and it's probably like even us like talking about it. She probably goes, right? I don't want. Why are we talking about this again?
Yeah.
And but yeah, like there's a lot in it. So fair warning if you're watching Game of Thrones, like there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, just be wary and know that it's not going anywhere. But
In the Logan thing, you said.
oh, and the Logan thing, I will say. So there's that moment where the girl in the backseat flashes Logan,
Yeah.
and in fact, from the movie, so I remember seeing it in the theaters and then at home, and they actually cut a line that she says. So she says there's dialogue that happens that was in the movie cut, the theatrical cut, and then there's dialogue that's not. Whatever. Anyways, it's not really pertinent to the story, but I think even more so than like the purpose that served was not so much of the flashing, but it was in the same. I think it was just a pan right. So it was her in the backseat. She flashed him. Camera pans right to him, and he just has this like kind of smirk look on his face, chuckle,
Yeah.
and like that look on Logan for me was that's what did it. That was just like here's why that was in there.
Okay.
Because this is the 1 second of smiling that you're going to get out of Logan.
Huh.
There's not much smiling else afterwards, ever throughout.
Yeah.
So it shows a bit of levity to break tension in Logan's character, right? Do you have to actually show it? Who knows, right? You could show her going to Flash, but then cut away,
Yeah.
and then have him get the same look, right?
Yeah.
But they were going for an R-rated Logan.
Yeah. Yeah, if you got an R-rated Logan, I mean, why not, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's not like it was like, I mean, it was super brief. It wasn't excessive, right?
and I agree with you. Nudity can play a part. Like I can't remember the show. I have to put it in the show notes. But there was a show about the Holocaust I was watching, and they showed actors portraying Jews before into the gas chamber nude, and I was like, that means something. Like I probably can't put into words like what that means, but I was like, that nudity portrays part of the story.
Completely vulnerability.
Yep. And
Complete vulnerability.
and it just shows the audience of just how another way of showing how cruel the Nazis were, how vulnerable the Jews were, like in that time. And these people are naked, men and women, and there's nothing sexual about it. It just it. I'm assuming this is what the directors wanted. It portrays the feeling of vulnerability for the Jews and fascism for the Nazis, which is exactly those feelings I already had were just solidified based on and obviously like that's a recreating of like something that actually happened, and so maybe it's just different. But that was the only issue I had with the whole series, the whole season one. Everything, the character development was great, the production was great, the casting was just on point. I don't know how they found these people, like the person that you had mentioned, Nina, I think your name was.
Nina Gold, yeah.
Yeah, just amazing job of getting in quality talent and then discovering new talent. I can only imagine that just continues to happen throughout the series. Amazing storytelling. The action was. I was really impressed that the action was kind of sparse. Where I think Game of Thrones and like I'm on TikTok. I've seen like the
those highlight reels.
Yeah, it's the highlight reels of like some of the things that I've seen on TikTok are like the episode where you have to like dim the lights because it's so dark. Like I know that big battles are coming. I know that a dragon or multiple dragons shows up at some point that's like fully grown. But I like that because like the battles are great, but I mean, you show me a battle where there's really no emotional investment in it. It's just I mean, yeah, I mean, cool battle, but if I'm concerned of like, don't you let fucking Jon Snow get stabbed in this battle, or where's the little Stark girl? I want to see who she stabbed in this fight.
Yeah.
And then when there's actual consequence with that battle, the people you care about, it makes the battle like though that much more satisfying. So season 1, it felt like a season where they're planting the seeds in your heart of why you should give a shit about some characters, why you should be interested in others, because you're building up to something in the future. Because the Game of Thrones, like they mention it once, where like the twin that's like the queen, that's really a bitch, says something about playing the Game of Thrones, but you really don't know what that is. Where it's like, well,
Cersei.
yeah, I'm like, what game? Like, what Game of Thrones? Like, yeah, I know it's the title of the show, but from my standpoint, Jeffrey's on the throne, and everybody else. I mean, he's on the throne. He's obviously in command now. You just killed the one guy that might be able to take the throne. Like, what is the Game of Thrones still? And this season felt like it was planting the seeds so that we can understand that comment more of what exactly is the Game of Thrones and what it means to like these people you now care about, because they walk you through, like you talked about, the journeys of these characters. Like the Peter Dinklage's character, I think he's an asshole. I think he's a piece of crap, but he's really nice to Jon Snow, so I kind of like him a little bit. I love Jon. I know he's going to do something great. I don't know what that is, but I'm really excited to see where he goes. The whole Stark family, including the little boy that they shoved out the building.
Bran.
Yeah. I'm like, well, where does his journey go from here? Like, obviously going to go somewhere because he survived that fall. The mother of dragons, like she goes through, she probably has it the worst of anybody this season 1, and she comes out as like this new birth with respect with the horse lords, with the witches, with this other guy that's kind of there. I don't remember his name. Obviously, she's going to do good things too, and it seems like all these characters. Oh, and there's the White Walker still. Like they didn't go anywhere. They're still around. I know they're coming at some point because they showed up once, and obviously there's a fear that they're going to come back. I'm assuming that at some point all of it collides at that Iron Throne. That seems to be like the thing that everybody wants to sit on is the Iron Throne. I'm assuming that all these characters at some point end up wanting to stake their place on that Iron Throne. And that's why it's called the Game of Thrones. Obviously, I don't know. But I care enough about all these characters now, or I'm at least interested enough to see where their journey goes and who's coming in, obviously, because I know there are going to be people coming in, of, in the end, who ends up sitting on that goddamn chair.
Yeah, man. Well, you're not wrong. I mean, I think you understand what the Game of Thrones is based on everything that you just said. I mean, the game is you win if you are on the throne, right? And everyone wants to be on the throne. And going back to your earlier comment about like, battles and wars, and you were expecting more of it and blah, 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 blah. Well, that made it sound like I was disinterested in your stuff, blah, 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 blah.
That's okay.
No.
I did go off for at least 5 minutes.
No. Which is not what I meant to say, but when I said that out loud, I was like, no, you said so much more than blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But essentially, right, you have a land and a people who know what war is. They've been through war. You see the throne, and it's made out of all of these swords that have been melted together from wars. They don't want to do any more wars. I mean, war is awful and terrible, and the consequences of war are outreaching. So they're doing everything that they can to avoid war. But they will absolutely go to war to maintain or get the throne.
Yeah.
So that's the game. And that is the dynamic of power. It's this game and dynamic of power and who has it, and the manipulation and the deceiving to get there. And maybe it's not the throne per se. Maybe it's the hand of the king. Maybe it's whatever. But it is, the underlying theme is like this want for power, this greed for power. And so that's really what like Game of Thrones explores. And then the consequences of that, because there are consequences for that. And this world is an unforgiving world, and it's not a fair world.
Mhm.
And I don't know, there's a brutality to Game of Thrones that I really like because it's just real. Because I feel like we all want to live in a fantasy land that everything's okay because it's comfortable. But that's not reality, you know? And I think people gravitate towards that because it is real. Like this is the consequences. But we don't actually have to go through it because we're seeing a representation of it, right? I think that there is a bit I think there's a difference, maybe I've said this on the podcast before, but I think there's a huge difference between depiction and promotion. And I think for the most part Game of Thrones depicts. I do think there's a bit of promotion in there. I think we already talked about the sexploitation, sex position.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a bit. It's a bit much. But as far as the rawness and the brutality of everything else, like that's kind of what makes Game of Thrones one Game of Thrones, but it makes the good moments that much better, right? And I think the reason that the sunrise is so warm is because the night is so cold.
Yeah.
And so there's this balance of yeah, this is the cold dark night and this is the warm sun morning, rise of the morning. And so, you know, you just don't feel the same warmth without the same cold and the same, you know, the same vice versa.
Yeah, I can already see it happening too, where it's like I can tell it's going to do a good job of like, did you call it the depiction versus the promotion?
Depiction versus promotion.
So like brutality is like all the stuff that we talked about like on this show. Like if you're with us this far, first thank you, because more coming. But like let's talk like you talk about like Arcane, or The Last of Us. Like those are two worlds that are very brutal,
Mhm.
right? You like the stuff that's coming, like Narcos, which is based on real world. Like Narcos is a brutal show based on brutal real life events. Like that is, it's a brutal depiction of violence. And that's okay. Like that's I think that's an okay place to live in. It's an okay to explore. It shows like the Terrifier that I'm just like I want no part of that.
Yeah.
Like that is the promotion of violence, and it's almost like this
Glorification of
yeah,
it.
it's almost like people go to see how they're going to top themselves now. Like I've never seen a Terrifier movie, but I've read descriptions on what happens. I'm like, why would anybody go see this?
Yeah.
Why? Like why? And they're like, well, I was throwing up when I was coming out of the theater because it was so gross. I was like, well, why the fuck would you go see something like that then?
Yeah.
Like that just seems like it's a promotion and celebration of like how far can we push this boundary and let's get ass in the seats of people that are interested in this. So I can already tell like Game of Thrones I would hope would never go to like a Terrifier point, and they're always going to depict this brutal world that they're living in a way that they're doing already, which I've enjoyed a lot so far. I'm gonna make a prediction. Now, I have not seen the end of the show, but I'm assuming at some point someone sits on the Iron Throne, right? At some point, someone is declared a winner. I think it is going to be 4 people. One of the 4 people.
Okay.
I think it will be Jon Snow. I think it will be Jon because he's the bastard son of a Stark, and I think he's going to prove himself in battle. I think he's going to move up the ranks as far as like he starts out of the Night Watch. He ends up sitting on the Iron Throne. 1. 2, I think it might be the little Stark girl because she's fierce, because she's trained, because she's a Stark, and I'm hoping she survives all of this. But I would really like to see her sitting on the throne as a female, leading this group that's just this whole nation really that's really anti-female. 3, I would assume that the Mother of Dragons will be on there because those 3 dragons it has. I'm assuming that they grow, and if this girl is the only girl in the whole world that has 3 dragons that are loyal to her, I can't see how anybody stops that. At the very end, she might be the only one left alive on this whole continent. Is her. 4, I think it might be that blonde-haired other twin. He's my other prediction.
Jamie Lannister.
Jamie Lannister. Because I know that some people had issues with the last season of Game of Thrones. I haven't read into why they have issues, but I'm assuming it's because someone ends up on the throne that they didn't like. And he is the one out of. I'm assuming that Jeffrey dies at some point. I really hope Joffrey does at some point. I really hope he does. But I don't know enough about the series that the blonde-haired guy, Jamie, I don't know if he dies or not. And if he ends up sitting on the throne together with his sister / queen, and that's how it ends, I would be like, really? Like they won? The Lannisters won? And if that's the way it ends, I can see how people would be upset. So those at this point, at the end of season 1, those are my 4 predictions on who ends up sitting on the throne at the end. If there's even a throne to sit on at the end.
Okay.
So I'm assuming at some point you have to declare a winner of the Game of Thrones. And I think we'll be one of those 4 people.
Well, I think what would be fun is at the end of every season that you get through, we do like a little talk through recap,
Mm-hmm.
and I ask you these same questions: Who's your favorite character? Who's your least favorite character? And now, who's the 4 that you think will be on the throne?
Okay.
And it will be fun to see the dynamic of that shift,
Okay.
because I just know it's going to shift.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know the whole
I
thing.
know the whole thing.
You know who sits on it.
But I also, but also like just the events that occur and all. Still though, I can just see this journey. I can already see your mind going, but wait, but who?
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Okay, let's do it. So, locked off listeners, expect these every once in a while. When I get through a season, we'll sit down and we'll have a recap episode. We'll talk through Game of Thrones, but yeah, I'm really I can see the hype. I had a discussion once with a buddy because he told me once, he was like, you got to compare. If I could compare Game of Thrones to anything, I would compare it to The Boys on Amazon Prime. And after watching it, I disagree with him in some ways, but I agree in others, to where it's a really well driven character story where no one is really good, everybody's really bad. There's just people that are less bad. They go over the top sometimes with. In this one, in The Boys, it doesn't have as much nudity and sexual violence as Game of Thrones does, but it has some graphic violence, almost to like we're not pushing Terrifier or Terror yet, but we're in the vicinity.
Yeah.
And but no, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's I can see why the hype. I'm glad it wasn't on the hype train while it was being hyped. I'm glad I get to watch it and binge it and kind of form my own thoughts. And because the internet, just when you watch shows live, I feel like a lot of people's thoughts are kind of swayed by the internet, where people are like, oh, I can't believe that they ended it this way or whatever. And you're the only one that's like, I actually like that episode. Your enjoyment of it, I think, can wane.
Yeah. Or at least you're afraid to share your enjoyment of it.
Yeah, because then you get roasted. Like I really enjoyed Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker. Man, I got roasted for that. They're like, that's the worst one. I was like, I loved it. I thought it was great. So no, I mean, I'm excited for season 2. I'll probably start season 2 tonight. I just finished Invincible season 1 too, so I'm watching it like at the same time.
Back and forth.
So I'm excited to start season 2 tonight.
Dude, well, I'm gonna go back and rewatch season 1.
Okay.
I mean, and I have them all on Blu-ray. I know I can watch them on Max, but I like physical media. But I will say, to close my thoughts off about it, is as a filmmaker and as a cinematographer, the execution that Game of Thrones has and is absolutely incredible and stunning. And of course, there's VFX in there, right? But there's a lot of practical stuff. And for me, that is the type of stuff, that's the type of stories that I, as a cinematographer, want to be a part of and I want to film and shoot, is these kind of these epic in scale stories that are rooted in the characters. Like, sure, the world is massive. Absolutely. But it's only massive because of the depth of the characters. And so that for me that's the type of stuff that I want to work on for forever. I mean, I want to do my own Count of Monte Cristo series. I want to do I would love to shoot like a season of House of the Dragon as it continues somehow, some way, or be a part of it, something, or just another world like it. There's just something so magical about the world of Game of Thrones for me as a filmmaker that I just think is the most incredible undertaking. And it's all grounded though by, again, characters and the performance of those characters and then the story arcs that happen through them throughout. So I don't know why it took me forever to watch it, but I'm glad that I did, and I made it in all one fell swoop in that month. There's a lot of Game of Thrones in a month. Not gonna lie, I felt pretty. I think I was like pretty heavy. Like I felt heavy for that whole month because it's not necessarily feel good content.
No, it's a tough world to live in.
It's a tough world to live in, but man, Westeros, and then I guess I'll start where I'll end where I finish. Like, what's west of Westeros? That's where I want to go. I'm excited. I'm excited for us to go.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Go there.
And like, now that you just finished those thoughts, like it is like a weird reflection of like our world too, where, I mean, people have fought for power forever, you know, and they'll do whatever it takes to get there. And you just hope that the less shitty one ends up on top. And this world we live in, it's a brutal world. People are used as chess pieces. Like women are in a lot of places in the world, and even here in the United States, are seen as lesser citizens. It's almost like a weird reflection on like our own society, where there are no heroes. In the more pessimistic view to see about it, it's like there really are no heroes. They're just people that are less shitty than other people. It's like my first watching. It's like, well, Jon Snow and Ned Stark seem like the less shitty of two people. Like obviously Jon, he sometimes can think with his emotions, and Ned obviously is not 100% faithful to his wife. Not perfect, but I hope that one of them end up on the throne. Obviously one can't because he's dead. And it's a weird reflection of our world that we live in. Because I mean, now that you think about it, and now we've talked through this, I mean, the brutality of it is very reflective of our world. The thoughts and feelings of people like in this show, the politics, they're just reflected different in Game of Thrones than they are in the real world. But I think the ideologies between the two are really not that far off.
Not that far off. Not that far off at all.
That's a little scary too. Anyway, Sam, take us home, man.
Well, thank you all for joining us. A little shorter episode. Just a brief recap on our thoughts of Game of Thrones. I've got to go sit in the throne, the dentist's office, to go get a root canal done. But hopefully I survive. You know, hopefully I don't get taken out by a White Walker along the way. It is winter here. It's funny. My dad always says winter is coming, and he hasn't seen Game of Thrones. And my stepmom just laughs because she goes, "You don't even know what you're saying," which you are starting to get a glimpse of winter is coming.
Yeah, Winter's Coming was the name of the first episode.
So, anyways, thanks again for listening. We're going to end it here. Again, this was a kind of a briefer just mind dump of.
Probably good though after a 2.5 hour soul dump that we just did with the last of it.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Probably good.
So, and then, last thing, just in the instance you end up like Ned, just be sure to tell somebody that you love them.
Cool. Thanks, Sam.
All right, man.
We'll see you next time. Oh, maybe that was a good episode, baby. God, interesting talking through that with you, too.